All right, welcome to another episode of The Brown Perspective. I'm here with my co-host Eduardo. ¿Cómo estamos?
Bien, bien, bien descansados, bien comidos, preparados para el fin de semana.
Yeah, another week. Mark it down from the calendar. Another week. Another 4 million people filed for unemployment, and a lot more news
Wow.
in the Twitter sphere. Before we get into any of this stuff, the are you have you seen people that have started cutting their own hair or cutting their own kids' hair?
I'm starting to see it more and more.
I had seen a few of those, and I thought to myself, like, why would you cut your kid's hair? Especially if the hair can grow for a while. I understand that it's getting hot,
Yeah.
but most people at home don't know how to cut. At least they don't know how to style it. They know how to cut it one size, but if they're trying
hmm
to blend it and give it a nice fade, then that's not going to work. So when I saw that, I thought to myself, all right, I'm not gonna come near my son's hair because it's short on the sides, but it's a little long on the top. But whatever, I was okay with it letting it grow. And then
hmm
yesterday, my wife comes and she's like, "I think I made a big mistake." And I said, "What?" So she showed me and she started cutting his hair. She didn't tell me she was doing it. She started cutting it.
Oh,
And it's a classic example of she thinks that cutting hair is a lot easier than it actually is because it's really
hmm
hard to blend it.
It's
So
a talent, dude.
yeah,
It takes
exactly.
skill.
So she started on the one on the side, one on the
Oh,
side, and then when she showed it to me, he had this really crooked cut already, and then he's 1.5, so he moves a lot, so it was all over the place. So I
so you
told
had
her,
a reggaetonero haircut.
I told her, I told her yesterday. I was like, just leave it. I'm gonna try to fix it. I'm gonna try to fix it tomorrow. So today, this morning, I spent like 30, 45 minutes trying to fix his hair, and I did the best I could, but uh, it
Hey, but I
looks,
think you probably tried because you've been getting fades, and you feel and you see how people do it. But yeah, it's definitely an art because right now, like my hair's a mess too.
yeah.
Like it kills me because growing up, like I had like a military clean cut, so it was very like I don't enjoy having hair and the sideburns. Like every time as soon as my sideburns get big, I was like, oh, it's time for a fade.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. You run a really nice clean fade, and you grew up wanting that. And right now, like, yes, I miss my barber so much, but I'm not gonna do it myself because I know that it's hard to fade. It's
Yeah.
hard to do it on your own. You need to have somebody to do it. Back home, back growing up, I used to have one of my boys. He used to cut my hair, and he did a really good job. It took him a while to get perfected, but he was able to do it.
You were the
But all
guinea
that
pig.
to say that I think after the pandemic, there should be a movement to say, here's what I'm going to appreciate more or what I'm going to advocate for. And one of them is going to be I want our barbers and hairdressers to get paid more, and I want our teachers to get paid more because
Right.
I think people now understand how hard it is to be a teacher.
Yeah, exactly. I was fortunate enough that I had previously experimenting with cutting my own hair. But you probably know, I don't know if you noticed, but back in college, there were a few times when I cut my own hair. And the reason it was purely out of necessity, not
hmm
necessarily economic necessity, because although I was pretty broke, I could always, I worked on campus, so I had enough money to go to the local barber. Remember, there was a barber
Yeah.
guy, a guy, a barber who had a barber shop at a Fon's house.
Oh
And
yeah, they used to do in Fon's house.
he was right in front of the arcade room.
Oh yeah,
The guy was terrible. Like every time I
Dance
went
Dance
in there,
Revolution. Yeah.
every time I went in there and I came out, I always felt upset because he did it in a way that I didn't want to, and there's this like weird, uncomfortable dynamic when you're getting a haircut and you speak up, but I feel like you don't want to speak up too much because then you
Yeah.
don't. But I would at least try to tell them like, oh, you missed this here, you missed this. There's this sense that
You
they're
want to
gonna
trust, like you don't want to tell the person how to do their job.
right, and then they're gonna think that you're a diva, that you're super particular if you ask for too many things. So, but sometimes that thing would be so crooked, or the fade, you could still see the line. He hadn't blended it correctly. So I would tell him,
Oh yeah.
but I just got tired of that. And then the guy was, he was one of those. I'm not gonna label him a racist, but he was one of those
Old
those
school.
old school guys from a different generation,
Mm.
white guy from the East Coast, and he would always make all these comments about inappropriate comments that he didn't even realize that they could be offensive. One time, like
Mm.
I would talk to him and he asked me, "Hey, so where are you from?" Blah blah. We would start talking about that, and he's like, "Oh, you're from Mexico, right?" He's like, "Yeah." So I've thought in the past about moving down to Mexico because everybody's like dirt poor over there, right? And I'll take some money and just with my savings open up a small place and hire me some help on cheap because over there they're so poor. I was like, yeah, I suppose, but I didn't get into it with them. It's like, you pick your battles, and you got to
Yeah.
understand that sometimes these guys, that's just, I would try to correct them in a way that without it getting too confrontational, because
Yeah.
I don't want to end up fighting with my barber. But anyway, long story short, I started cutting my own hair because that was the only accessible guy. Anything else was either too far away or too inconvenient for me to try to do. So
So too much, too time consuming.
yeah, so I started doing it by myself. I did it a few times. I'm sure I messed it up. People would always tell me like, "Oh no, you did," because I would tell them like I'm the type of guy
Yeah.
that'd be like, "Hey, I cut my own hair today because I know you're gonna notice some stuff. So
So I tell you, let me
just
put
get
it
it out
out
of the
there.
way." And they would say, "No, you did an amazing job." And I'm like, "Yeah, right. You don't have to be nice." Because
Yeah.
I'm not that type of guy. I would tell somebody like, "Yeah, you kind of messed it up." I know I would always mess it up in the back. The back is the hardest part. So
It was funny,
I
but going back to the barber, welcome. You got a little taste of what it was growing up in the East Coast as a Latino, and some of the dynamics that we were confronted with. So there's that, and the other piece is it's funny because it's always that awkward moment when they give you the mirror to take a look, or or as they cut in your hair, you try to get a peek, and you kind of look when they turn you around. You want to look at okay, how is he doing it? Is it too high, too low? Am I liking it? Should I tell him to go lower? And sometimes you don't get that opportunity, so then it's like the moment of truth where they give you that that mirror and you look at it, it's like, okay, it's okay, I like it, I can live with it. I would have fixed this, I would have done that, but it looks good. Or like, oh, this is awesome, I look good, I feel good, this is nice. And then there's other times where like, you know what, I should tell him to do this and that. And
yeah.
it's like, okay, yeah, yeah, it looks good, but can you fade it up, or can you cut here? Oh, I think I want to lower. And I think when you provide that feedback, so that's why once you find a barber. That's why once I found somebody that knew how to cut my hair and that I like, that's why I stay so faithful to my barber, because it's important. Like, and need people that know how to deal with your hair too, and that like your style.
Yeah, no, other men will definitely know what we're talking about when it comes to this. Just as we have no clue what it is for a woman to go in and get her hair cut,
Yeah,
I feel this is one of these things that is uniquely, for the most part, unless you're a woman that has short hair. But even then, it's probably even more important to get the right stylist. When my wife
yeah.
goes and gets her haircut, she comes back and she's like, "Do you notice something different? Do you notice something different?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "I cut my hair." I was like, "Oh, I no, yeah,
And you paid who? How much?
yeah, yeah."
And
Sometimes when
what?
they get upset because they have to pay over $60, even more, to get their
Yeah,
haircut.
it's expensive, yeah, and all that stuff. Like, and they le cobran por todo. Okay, oh, si te lo
Yeah,
lavo, brushing, all this stuff. That when I first heard about how much a woman's haircut is, I was like, what? That's insane. Like, why would you pay? But then again, they only go maybe once every 3 months. So I think we go. I at least go every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks or so.
mm-hmm.
So I guess it probably adds up at the end. But it's funny because in the barber shop, and having gone, because growing up, you go to the barber shop that your parents take you or my mom takes you. So for me, it was growing up in Colombia, having, going to barbers. But then here, when I was growing up, there was a gay Colombian guy who cut hair, and that's where my mom went, and that's where I went. So he was good, and so that was my go-to barber. But then
Mm-hmm.
obviously once you grow up, you find your own barber. And then when I went to DC, getting a chance to experience the barber culture, within the African American community, right? Which is very similar to the barber culture here in LA, but it's different. Like in DC, is definitely African American. I
Yeah,
mean, you have some Latinos here and there, but that banter, those jokes, the to talk about the local teams. There's a lot of things that you hear about people coming out of prison, people live in
Hmm.
prison, people. So it's just such a communal experience when you go to a bar, when you become part of a barbershop community.
Yeah, you mentioned two words there that brought back some memories. The first one is the gay barber.
Hmm.
I had a gay barber at some point. I don't recall exactly where it was, but he used to definitely massage my hair a little bit more than a regular barber would. I remember that. He used to just feel the head, cut it, and then stroke the hair with his hands as he was doing it. It wasn't blatant. It was just a little bit more. He just put a little bit more to it. And I always felt that it's probably because the guy was gay, but it felt good, so I didn't really complain.
Oh, like it's a haircut and a massage. Cool.
Yeah, because look, I'm not too concerned about it. If the guy, if that was just his style, if it was a gay guy and he felt super comfortable doing that, and I don't know, whatever. I just remember that it felt pretty good. I wasn't gonna complain much about it. I'm comfortable with my sexuality, so I wasn't going to make a big stink about that. And
That's right.
the other one is the black barbers. The few times that I went to them, I really like going to black barbers. And the only
Yeah.
reason why I didn't go to them permanently is because I'm more of a creature of convenience. Like if something is close by, chances are I'm just going to go and get my hair cut there. I'm not going to drive 45 minutes or an hour where I can go somewhere 5 minutes. It would have to be something that I value a lot more. And although I value my haircut, again, convenience trumps anything else in that case. But I like the way that the black barbers would cut it because usually African American hair is a little bit harder to
Hmm.
blend and to style, and because they don't have the same type of range or options when it comes to other people like with hair like myself, where we can
Hmm.
style it a million different ways. Like for them, there's like a certain it's a little more limited. So they focus
The fade, yeah.
on the fade, on having the lineup, on having that
Hmm.
fade that it's like a super smooth blend. Like
Hmm.
Latinos, you go into the hairs like in LA, you go into the barber shop and in 5 minutes they get you out of there, right?
It's more about the top game, right? It's just like
Yeah,
the side is just like boom, 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 but
yeah.
then the top they kind of take a little bit more time. They know how to use the scissors, and both with like female Latina barbers. I've gone and shout out to Cutting Up in DC, my boy Stony, because it used to be my boy Stony who was the best barber, and there's always like the number one chair, and usually that's the guy you want. And then there was another guy who was pretty good too. But you know, I heard a friend, I was referred to Stony, so I went with Stony. And then there was a Colombian lady, Letty, and you know, and I was like I used for the most part, I came and I waited for Stony, even though he was busy. I waited
Oh,
so
that's
long, but I was like,
uncomfortable.
he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, that's
And
also
then
uncomfortable
and
when you
then,
have to wait.
huh?
When you have to wait and one of the barbers frees up and they're like,
Yeah,
"Wait, who's next?" And you're like,
yeah.
"Nah, I'm waiting for the other guy." And then you have like five other people waiting for that other guy as well because he's the only good one.
Hmm.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but I gave her the shot, right? And she did a good job, obviously. And the good thing is like he was helping because I think he understood, you know, I need to have somebody because she cut like the Latino hair and the white people hair. So that's the thing. So like because she was available as soon as a white client used to come in, they used to go with her and you know
Mm-hmm.
and they used to banter and you know she's nice, she's Colombian, she has like the Gloria personality like accent. So here's a Colombian lady in a barbershop full of African American men, and then it was funny like to just experience that. And but then when I came in, even though I wasn't with her, like I talked to her in Colombian Spanish and kind of get to so that also felt nice. And I also saw that she did get her clients. She had her regulars that also came, but probably didn't come as often as others. So yeah, so I think definitely the black barber is like a whole experience. And the guy that cut my hair, he was Trini, so he had the Caribbean African American experience, and then the DC experience. And but here in LA, it's been a trip because it's kind of like such a mix. So now I go to a barbershop, where it's a type of place where I can go and I know all of them are good. So whatever the next chair is available, I'll go. So if it's the number one guy, that's perfect. If it's a number two or three, that's fine. Like I know they cut my hair. I see how they do it. I know they can handle it. And some of them do something better, like that they do the fade a little cleaner, or
Hmm.
they cut the top a little cleaner. But for the most part, that like I found my place, I go there, and now I don't have to wait. So it's a better experience.
Just one last thing before we switch on to covering some of these topics that we want to get to. The last thing I'll mention about the barbers is that each 10 years, you know how the fad changes. You go from the in the early 2000s, it was the Ricky Martin. Everybody wanted the
Mhm.
Ricky Martin hairstyle, comb it
The
forward, and then
highlights.
yeah, and then just raise it at the top a bit, but it's
Yep.
comb forward. And then now you have the comb over. So the problem is, if someone like me, I always go to different, or if I go to a different barber, um yeah, if you don't specifically tell them what you want, if you're just vague about it, if because I go in there and I say, yeah, just give me a blend. Well, like,
Mhm.
depending on the what the current fashion is, they're gonna give you that based on. So I walked into this place and I walk out with a comb over. I was like, wait, I didn't ask for a comb over. But
Oh, that's funny.
like, the thing with me is like, even if they mess it up, it's like, well,
But
whatever.
did it look okay though? Because that's the other thing. You got to make sure that you
Well, yeah, it's just that
try different
it
haircuts.
may have looked okay, but it depends because if you're because it's usually the younger crowd that has the comb over.
Mm.
And so it's more about personal style. Obviously, they do a good job within that style,
Well, it's
but
also a hairstyle because not all hairs can do that.
well, exactly. For that's why for me, my style, I can do that. And if I just tell them I just want to blend or just give me a fade, I'm thinking, okay, they're just gonna cut it short on the sides and cut a little bit off the top. I'm not thinking they're gonna really cut it short on the sides and then all the way to the top and give me the comb over.
Hmm.
But at least someone like me, I've already come to terms with the fact that if I'm gonna go into a barbershop and I'm not gonna tell them specifically what it is that I want, because I'm not like that. I just tell them a blend. Then I'm already opening up myself for whatever interpretation that barber has of what a fade is or a blend. So I
Yeah,
don't
which is
even
cool.
complain. It
Which
grows back anyway in 2 weeks.
Yeah, my head is not designed for a comb over. My hair is not designed for a comb over. So I mean, part of me, I mean, and when I've had long hair, like I think that's sort of the option, right? Because I really, and yeah, and I use gel, but like my hair gets curly when I do that. But I know we want to talk about other things. The last thing I'll say about barbershops, I love that what makes the culture is either the sports that you watch or the music that you listen to. And I love that in both barbershops in DC and here in LA, music was an important part of it. And here it's so amazing because I go to a barbershop where they play like hardcore hip hop, sometimes even underground hip hop and stuff. And then they also play like corridos, norteñas, and all this. Like, so it's like, so that's why a corrido song with Bad Bunny made sense to me, and I actually appreciate it that he was able to cross over and appeal to that crowd.
That's the West Coast playlist. That's the only place where you jump from a Tupac to a Chalino Sanchez or some
I
other
know.
norteña. It's like, dude, come on, man. At least like, we're in a barber shop. We're talking about blending. At least blend the music a little bit. You gotta ease somebody into a Chalino. You can't just jump from a Tupac to Chalino. Come on, a good DJ will know. You go from Tupac and then maybe you go to some reggae, some reggaeton, and then you go to something that can still get people dancing, like the cumbias or the merengues. You start with the merengue, you start with the cumbia, and then you work your way down. And at the end of the spectrum is corridos. There's a lot. There's a lot in between. Anyway, yeah,
That's funny.
we ended up
You're right, but
talking.
that's the emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, we ended up talking a little bit more about hair than I thought we would.
Yeah, but notice that that's going to be my challenge moving forward. How many Bad Bunny references I can sneak into the episode?
It's gonna be like Seinfeld, where they had a figure of Superman in every episode in the background. I guess if you
Mm,
look close enough, it always comes out. So that's gonna be you, always a Bad Bunny reference.
always. So look out for it.
All right. So there's two things that I wanted to talk a bit about today. The first one is Trump. You know, unfortunately, fortunately, and unfortunately. Fortunately,
Hmm.
there's always something to talk about with him, and unfortunately, there's always something to talk about with this guy. And the last one was his recommendation to inject disinfectant. And here's the exact quote, because before we get into people defending him or what he really meant, it's important to put the right quote so we don't take him out of context.
I appreciate that.
Here's what he's saying. I see the disinfectant that knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute, and there's a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning. As you see, it gets in the lungs. It does a tremendous number on the lungs, so it would be interesting to check that. And when I read this, there's very little doubt in my mind that he's not mixing terms and he's not misspeaking. He's talking first about disinfectants that clean something on the surface, on an exterior. And then it
Hmm.
says, hey, if it cleans it outside, is there a way we can do something where we can inject that disinfectant inside or almost a cleaning? So to
Hmm.
me, the guy's talking about injecting a disinfectant. What do you
Hmm.
make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel part of it is it's a testament to how ignorant he is, right? So it's a dumb statement to be making, particularly as a president, right? Because we want somebody who knows what they're talking about, and I think obviously he doesn't know that applying, inhaling, injecting a disinfectant could be could be deadly and could cause so much damage. So that's why the response the following morning was so strong, because that's something stupid, and unfortunately some people may not know that that's not the thing to do, and they're just going to do it because their president or somebody that they admire um as told them that they should do that. Oh, I heard this, like, oh, I wonder if it works. So I mean, so that's the sad reality, right? So it's almost like, um damn, like he didn't, he wanted to be helpful, he wanted to say something, but instead of letting the doctors speak or just saying, I don't know, let me get the doctors to, like, to rely on his experts, I think he was just out of his league.
Yeah, I was reading the Twitter comments about that statement, and believe it or not, there's actually people that are defending him, saying that that's not
Wow.
what he meant. That the
Yeah.
left is going nuts, taking what he said out of context and making it seem like he recommended to inject disinfectant. Which again, that's why I wanted to pull out the quote, because that's exactly what he's saying. And
Yeah.
remember, we talked about this in our last recording about how for a certain group of people, you get the benefit of the doubt. So you have to really, really, really bring it in the
Yep.
department of stupid or ignorant. You have to,
Hmm.
man, you have to overachieve and excel in that department for people to start thinking like, wait a minute, this guy he's not very bright, is he? And even with
Hmm.
Trump, people are still not saying that. Some people are, but especially those that support him, they're still defending him. And people need to learn to differentiate between someone that you support politically could still be a dumb person. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily, just because you support them doesn't mean that they can't do no wrong. Like, the guy is obviously wrong in making these comments, and he should have corrected them right away, because there's people equally uneducated or uninformed or dumb that are going to think that they can do this. You heard about the people that were using disinfectant to wipe fruit, right? And
Hmm.
people were doing that too. You don't do that. But people are going to do it. So anyway, I was reading Twitter this morning about the comments, and I was surprised. I can't find them right now, but there were a few, I'm not going to call them right wingers, but definitely Trump supporters that were defending him. And then typical people start fighting on Twitter. And again, just because you support Trump doesn't mean that the guy sometimes he says stuff that he has no clue what he's talking about. So you can criticize him even if you want to support him in some of his other policies. For example, I'm not a Trump supporter, but I like the fact that when he was running, at least he was the only one that was saying that we need to get the hell out of the Middle East.
Hmm.
I can appreciate that the guy at least would say that, even though I disagree with just about everything else he says. So that was I wanted to get that in.
No,
And
that's interesting because I think there's also the way he speaks. It's also is a lot of it's left for interpretation. So I can also see how, because he gets criticized so much, that there's people who try to defend him and say, yeah, I mean, that's not really what he said, what he was trying to say, but unfortunately he wasn't able to articulate it well. Is that, you know, but this type of statement, there's really no, like, he said injection and disinfectant in the same sentence, so it's really hard for to walk it back, right?
yeah,
And then, but yeah, but so now it's like, how is he gonna, and obviously for him, and that's the thing, that has been his MO, like he doubled down. So he'll double down, he'll continue to do things and say things that other people would not imagine a politician would do afterwards. But that's how committed he is, and some people appreciate that, right? Like some people see him as courageous, standing up to the, deep state, the elite who make fun of him just because he doesn't speak the way they do, all
hmm
that stuff. So I think that's why there's strong support for him too, because I think some people see a little bit of the underdog, um, in him.
yeah, yeah. Definitely, I can see that part again, but that's the part that I'm saying. You should be able to distinguish between supporting him in areas where you think he's right, and if you see that he's doing something wrong, then just call him out and just say, yeah, sometimes the guy says stupid stuff. There's
Yeah,
nothing.
but the thing is, like, is there's a degree of saying stupid things and saying really dumb things and then doing some messed up things. So there's a, like, yes, like I can value that for him, but if he's trying to ban even legal immigration, and so it's like, okay, if you're an anti-immigrant, I understand why that will be appealing to you. But if you're in the middle of the road and you're just supporting because he's appointed conservative judges, like, why aren't you saying something about the messed up immigration policy that is not only against your moral and your religious interests, it's also against your economic interests and the economic interest of the country, but more importantly, your party, because the business folks are the ones that tend to support you because of your low taxes approach and small government. So when those people are silent, that's the problem. So like that's my problem. Like if you're supporting, if you just supporting a party and him to get just one or two issues passed, but then you turn a blind eye to the other stuff, that's difficult. And I know that's an argument that can be said about Democrats too, and about Joe Biden and other candidates, right? Because like there's not a purity. Like it's difficult for me to say, oh, I'm a Democrat, and then even if a Democrat does one or two stupid things, that then I'm gonna become a Republican or do something else. And yes, some people do, but it's this weird thing with politics that sometimes that tends to happen, that people are just kind of stuck in their very narrow political label.
Yeah, women have the same dilemma with Trump because they supported him for a number of reasons, but it was pretty clear that he's a misogynist, that the way that he talks or treats women, the condescending remarks. So yeah, they must have had a field day trying to reconcile their support for him with the stuff that they don't like. And speaking of this, the Trump, the not the Trump, the rapist jokes are starting to come out about Joe Biden. So brace
Hmm.
yourself for that, because if you support Joe Biden, you're gonna have to reconcile how you can support that guy, knowing fully well that there's enough of a pattern there that you can actually say, well, ooh, when do we jump over from just creepy Joe? I've already made the jump from Uncle Joe, as you call him, to creepy Joe. But
Damn.
it might go beyond creepy Joe. I'm not saying there's obviously I want to look for more evidence, but it's piling up, man, and Trump's gonna bring it out too. The
Yeah, but
guy,
that's like el burro hablando de orejas. Like why would, like, if Trump does that, then you Biden will bring everything else. But that's the thing. But that's not the politics. that I want to see. I want
Well, that's
discussions on issues and not about stupid things. Unfortunately, that's what happens when you have two candidates from that generation, right? They
yeah,
have the political baggage and the societal baggage
but
that comes with it.
that's where Trump wins, though. Trump wins that debate every single day. The reason is because Trump doesn't pretend to be someone else. He
Hmm.
owns most
That's
of the
right.
stuff, and Biden is pretending like, no, that's not me. And the reason why, so that's why I'm saying Trump wins that debate every single day. And the part that I was getting at earlier was all these people that speak for Trump and clarify his statements. They should just do what Trump does and just own the fact that Trump is a man child, ignorant, and he doesn't makes all these like blunders, and just say, yeah, that's kind of dumb. I don't know why he said that. We'll talk to him and we'll see if we can correct that statement about disinfectants. You just come out and say that.
But this is why I support him, and this is why I still believe in him.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Yeah, it's hard to get consistency out of people. Like, first of all these people that the people around him, like everything that they say in public, I don't even listen to anything they say because nothing that they say is really what they mean. Like,
Hmm.
nobody is telling you what they really think about Trump. Because if and again, this is a problem when you have political parties, when you have people, when you have all these formalities. Everyone that supports Trump, at least because they want to give the present an image of being unified, the Republicans, they don't even come out and say what people like me and you can say, which is
Hmm.
that this guy is pretty ignorant, and most people, at least the ones that didn't vote for him, were saying early on, this guy's not qualified to be president. There's no way this guy is not qualified at all. He could get people to die because of this statement. That's how dumb he is. That he doesn't understand that people will listen to what he's saying and they'll go and try to either drink or inject themselves with disinfectant and they'll die. This guy's not qualified to be
But
nobody
you know
says
what?
that.
Like he's also been doing that on TV for so long, and like I think maybe what the difference is that he just doesn't think people are like back in those days. It was just controversial, and but nobody would listen to him. Nobody would take him serious. You know, he was an entertainer, kind of provocative. But in this case, like he's become a reliable source, and people listen to that and take that as an authority. So that's I think that's the problem. I think he's always done that. Now it just has repercussions because people actually listen because of the position that he's currently in.
Yeah, yeah. All right, from one controversial, somewhat controversial topic to another. Governor Newsom announces 75 million in statewide disaster relief funding to provide financial support for immigrant workers affected by COVID-19.
Hmm.
Did you hear about that this week?
I did, and I'm very happy, very proud, and give Governor Newsom kudos for doing that. I mean, he's doing the right thing because it's the right political thing to do in a state like California.
Yes, I agree. But I have to ask the tough questions though, because
Hmm.
we can't just criticize other people and not point the criticism inward.
Hmm.
What about the millions of people in California that are not undocumented, that can't, that are not getting the assistance that they need, right? Because this is the argument that they're already making about this, that conservatives, right wingers, and even conservative Latinos, by the way, I think that lawsuit, he's getting sued for this, by the way, and that lawsuit was brought by somebody from your district, from Whittier, and one of the I don't know if it's the council members or what position he has, but it's a Latino, and they're bringing
Hmm.
this lawsuit against Trump. And their argument
Against
is,
Newsom, you mean?
I'm sorry, against Newsom, not Trump. What is your response to people that use that argument?
Well, a couple of things. If you're not an immigrant, meaning you're a legal resident, or I guess if you're a citizen and you're entitled to get help, you are gonna get help. Help is you're qualified for a lot of the programs.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if you're poor, you qualify for Medicaid, Medi-Cal. You're gonna get funds. You're getting Social Security. All these things. The safety net is yours, as poor as you are. Obviously, once you get to the middle class, it's tricky. But if you're a poor citizen of the United States, you can get help. Maybe you don't know how to get that help, but there's help out there for you. And the other thing is, immigrants, you have to acknowledge their contributions too. Like,
Hmm.
they pay taxes, they pay Social Security, they contribute to the economy. And how are you just gonna take money away from them and not help them out when they contributed to the system? And one of the reasons that Social Security is still viable is because of the contributions of immigrants who are not going to, a lot of them, a majority of them are not going to get that money back. And that's just like free money that the US government got, and that all of us, in as a result, got. So there's that. And these are the individuals that are still growing the food, that are doing essential jobs, cleaning the hospitals, risking their lives. There's so many things that they're doing. That's the least we can do. And actually, the complaint is that it should be more. It should be a lot more,
Yeah.
because of the contributions and what they mean to the state, to the city, and here in the LA. But like, it's important. But that's not only in California. That's the same case in so many other states and across the country. In some states recognize it. In some states where the immigrant population is strong politically, they're going to have type of these policies that were actually. And you have to think, like, you go back, this is very different from Proposition 187. This is actually the opposite of that. But this is directly tied to the fact that there's more Latino politicians and political leaders, and Latinos are more powerful voting black now, that the governor would do this initiative at this point.
Well, that last part that you just mentioned makes it sound like it's just a political strategic move more than anything. If he's just thinking about his polls or his support
Yeah,
base.
but it has both political risk and political reward. In this case, is the political reward of supporting symbolically, the majority of voters, residents, of leaders. Like, it is something, and he does put, but at the same time he opens up himself up for criticism. But like, the thing is, like, he does this because it's consistent.
I was gonna say that I liked what you had said initially about the justification for giving relief to immigrants because of their contributions, as opposed to it being a strategic political move that has benefits that the where the benefits outweigh the risks. And what I was I'm not gonna focus too much on the political side of it because yeah, every decision that he makes is politically based, especially because you said there's this state the because of the number of Latinos in the state. But the justification that he would give or that you just gave or that someone like me that I would give because Latinos are a valuable provide valuable contributions to the society because they pay taxes, they don't get anything back. I'm afraid that something like that goes in the ear of someone and out the other of someone that they're anti-immigrant.
But they still need to hear it. They still
Yeah,
need to hear it because they, deep down inside, they know that it's wrong. Deep down
yeah, but
inside, they know that
let me try to
that's true.
play out what their thought process is like. First of all, they're here illegally, right? So they'll say
Yeah, that's
they're
always a
here
fundamental. Yeah.
they're here illegally. So even if they're working and paying into the system, they're already here illegally. That's they're getting benefits by being in this country. So the benefits that they get of working and getting a higher wage that they would in their own country, and then they'll justify it that way, right? They'll say that
Can I respond?
sure,
So my response is, yes, they're illegal, but part of it is they're illegal because you haven't had the political courage to support politicians who support resolution. You have benefited from them. You have benefited from the U.S. government, the American interests, messing up countries in Latin America imposing governor and governments and keeping your interests, keeping your products cheap, and contaminating us and doing all that stuff, sending the shitty jobs down south.
Hmm.
So you benefited from that. You also benefited them by knowing them that they are here, that that they're getting paid shit to pick up your vegetables and your fruit and cleaning, do all these things. You also benefited, even if you don't go to Home Depot, but chances are you have gone to Home Depot. You have taken advantage of somebody to come do your garden, clean your house, do all those things. You have indirectly benefited from the injustice in the system. So, don't try to be all like moral now and say, oh, they're here illegally. Yes, they're here illegally because it's cheaper for them to be illegally, and if they were here legally, they would get the respect and the rights that they deserve. And while that's not happening, those of us who are legal really care about them, and so we're gonna say we're gonna take care of them because we are in charge, we are politically active, and that's what needs to happen. So,
And you should run for office with that type of
nah,
response.
man.
It's good. Yeah, yeah. No, it's good, and I hope that most people would think beyond just the initial knee jerk reaction that they get when it comes to immigration. But you're absolutely right. We've talked about this before. If people just thought these things all the way through, the United States didn't just become the country where Latin American immigrants wanted to move into because it was a prosperous country. It's not the same as Europe, where that immigration did happen very organically that way. America was developing very fast, and immigrants from Europe were coming because this is where you came to improve your condition. But in Latin America, to the extent that that was happening, that also happened somewhat. But then the United States, it became so powerful that we started interfering in their internal politics,
Hmm.
and we started pushing those politicians, pushing our companies like the United Fruit Company in Central America that owned the land, and they had pretty much control of the land and controlling the politicians, paying
The Banana Republic.
paying crappy wages. And yeah, we've people in this country have benefited from that since the 70s, even before that. So here they are sitting in their nice home that is essentially subsidized by the exploitation of workers around the world. And when those workers want to move over here because they're not stupid, they're not making a lot of money back home, they say, hey, the United States, you can make a better living over there, so we're going to move over there. And then they start complaining. So what about, to earlier when you were saying the regarding, when I asked you about how they justify it, another justification that they're going to make is that even though regular Californians do have access to help, you still have a lot of homeless people. You still have people that are being crushed
Hmm.
by medical debt. Surely you can take that 75 million and help citizens who, beyond the help that they already receive, is it's still not enough.
No, I agree, completely agree with you. And I think I would have to say that at the same time, you got to think about why is it that we have those homeless people? Why is it that people are in the streets? Is it because we have been unwilling to extend health care, to extend the minimum wage? Is it because we haven't addressed um, drug use and provided psychological treatments, that we haven't provided job opportunities, that we haven't provided solid primary education so that people can deal with the things that are happening in their communities, how we stop discrimination so that their families are able to work and able to advance economically and contribute even more to the society. Oh, we haven't done that, but why not? Because you've been protecting your own interests, because you've been wanting not to have things in your own neighborhood, because you don't realize that you're in this together until now. Like, we are in this together. So you notice that is by caring about the people who are most vulnerable, the homeless, the
Mm-hmm.
immigrants, the poor, the sick. That's when we become stronger as a society. So that's what's going to need to happen. We need to say, yes, like it's messed up that is there, but they're there for reasons, for policy reasons, for the closing of mental health services, for Proposition 13 that really
Mm-hmm.
limited how much money the state and localities can get from property taxes, and that was something that was driven in the 70s by conservatives that are now are impacted programs and the funding, school budgets, and all those things. So all that to say that immigrants did not cost that. Immigrants and immigration is a system of the larger problems, policy problems, and things like that you haven't addressed either as a city, as a state, as a country. And I think California is in a good place now because there was a lot of, and there continues to be a lot of political and civic participation, and that's and accountability and mobilizing, and that's why we are where we are, and that's why we're as strong of a position that we are, and why we have as strong leaders as we have currently. Not to say that they're perfect, not to say that they're messing up, but we're definitely New York, California, New York, and other folks are showing how government is supposed to work, how leadership is supposed to be, and obviously that's my bias because I believe in government, and I believe you can do a lot of great things with government, but it got to be smart government. But there's certain things that we wouldn't be able to do as a society, as a country, if it weren't for our government and the structures that protect it.
Right. But while I agree with everything you said, what you're talking about is a long term plan for how we correct some of the errors
Mm-hmm.
that got us here in the first place. But
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah, it's
has,
time for a new deal, baby.
right, right. But that, see, you're talking about investing in something that takes 10, 15, 20 years to see the results.
Yeah.
But that doesn't help with the current situation where there's 75 million. You could do both. Like, so I could say, okay, I'm with you on what you're saying, but we're not going to fix that overnight. You can still take this 75 million that was given to immigrants and use it to help those that are currently affected by the system that is in place because of bad policy decisions in the past that we commit to correct, but that's still going to
Mm-hmm.
take a long time.
Yeah, so that's true. So I think it's understanding the big political things and policy things that you got to do. But I think the best blueprint for how to do this is what FDR, and not only FDR, obviously he gets all the credit, but it was a whole movement. Like the Great New Deal, it was a culmination of the women suffragist movement, of like in some the earlier version of civil rights,
Mm-hmm.
of immigrant rights. So all of that like was happening as we hit the depression, and then as FDR got elected to help us get out of it, what did he do? He created jobs. He put people to work building the infrastructure of the time, bridges. My school was built during and I'm forgetting the name, but I think it was the world.
The Green New Deal.
Yeah, it was, but there was a particular agency that was building dams, schools, infrastructure, putting people to work. I'm trying to remember where it was, but my school was built for that. But all that to say that now there's ways that you can put all those people to work, and also at the same time make sure that they're spending, that they're buying, so that localities can get tax revenue to invest in those programs. But you got to think about what infrastructure, what would make sense. Well, obviously broadband and technology, solar energy, better healthcare. So if you expand the healthcare system, you needed more workers, people will be healthier. So there's a lot of things that could be done, but obviously it would take a lot of political will and a lot of and it will have to probably get worse. And all that to say that, I mean, all those were key ingredients in getting America out of a depression. But obviously, then the big thing was World War II, and that just mobilized the country and producing and things like that in a way that was unprecedented. So I don't know if it's going to get to that level, but
Yeah,
it's there's things that you can do short of a war to to react and respond to what's happening now.
yeah, that's what I was gonna
In my
mention.
humble opinion.
Well, I was gonna mention briefly that some people would argue that it was ultimately World War II that got the country out of the Great Depression. That all
It
that
was, yeah.
government spending that was happening before that, it was helping, but it wasn't. It really wasn't kickstarting the economy the way that they thought it would. But going back to this justification, I know that if someone's listening to this podcast or if they've listened to the ones before, I'm gonna clarify that I'm not of the opinion that immigrants should not be helped. I try to look at it from the other side to see how they're trying to justify this. And when I think about it, yeah, my community is the immigrant community, and of course we should help them. I also think beyond that, I say if I lived in Mexico and we had immigrants from Central America, Salvadorian, Honduran, and a similar situation happened, and you had all these immigrants in Mexico, and all of a sudden the Mexican government was going to also start giving them money. I wonder how many Mexicans would be against that. And
You know the answer to that a whole
yeah,
lot.
be a lot of them, exactly. So
That's the situation now. I mean, you have folks in Mexico, you have folks in Venezolanos in Colombia and other parts of
yeah,
Latin America.
yeah.
But for the most part, I think the initial reaction was generous, though.
Well, it's
I
always
think it's
generous when so if you live in a southern state and you have a Central American immigrant that's crossing and you see him and you see that he's hungry, yeah, you're gonna help him. You're gonna give him some money. You're gonna give him some food and then help him on his way. And the main reason is because he's not sticking around. He's just passing through.
yeah,
What happens when it's not just one, but it's thousands? And not just passing through because first of all you don't have enough food to give them, but what if they're sticking around? All of a
yeah.
sudden people aren't as generous as they used to be.
Yeah, but
And
now you realize how do we incorporate him into our society? How do we get him to jobs? How do we get him to school? How do we give him education? Oh, now we have more customers. Now we have more employees. Now we have more people who are starting businesses. Oh, we have like, um, we have towns are getting renewed. There's more spending happening.
wait, but
So
that's not
yes,
happening with the people that are just migrating. They're just passing by. They might stick around for a few days or a few weeks before they eventually move on, right?
yeah,
This
but that's the thing. Like it's hard. It's difficult to have to build to incorporate immigrants, but that's one of the things that the US does, and they always benefited because that's the system, right? You bring the immigrants, you bring the people who are the smartest, most dedicated, or just the lucky ones who can get out, and they have the hustle. They're gonna struggle. They're gonna strive for more. They're gonna work harder, and then they're gonna do well. And then they're gonna be spending, and then they're gonna be empowering their community. Then they're gonna be sending money back to Latin America too. That's the only thing. Like remittances are getting. I think I heard something crazy. Like I forgot what the figure was, but I know people in Mexico are going to at least $1 billion, I think, in direct remittances from from immigrants in the United States to Mexico. And think about it: you have people who are not only living in the United States, but also supporting entire families back in Mexico who are struggling right now.
no, definitely, I agree with you.